FD4Cast is a simple and user-friendly financial forecasting model. It helps the user to easily plan each financial statement item and see the corresponding output. In this video, we will explain briefly how to perform the model's initial setup and configuration. Then we will go into details on how to enter inputs and review the outputs. You can get the model by simply going to www.fd4cast.co.uk/free trial. Within seconds after filling out and submitting the free trial form, you will receive an email with links to download a fresh copy of the model and also a demo model. After opening the model, click on Enable Editing and then Enable Content. This will ensure that all the macros are successfully loaded into the framework. Subsequently, you'll be required to select a 30-day trial version or use the unlock key. It can be purchased by going to www.fd4cast.co.uk/pricing. After making a selection, you'll be prompted to set the model start date, enter company name, and add rows to categories. Categories are separate items of income, expenses, assets, for which there are separate input sections displayed on the FD4Cast ribbon. By default, each category contains one row. It is possible to add up to 50 rows to each category. After the initial setup, user can proceed with further configuration of the model. In the drop-down list of Configure Model from FD4Cast ribbon, you will see the following options. Configure from blank template enables the user to configure the model from scratch. You can also change the model start date, show hide categories, or add remove categories altogether. Model financial year start date is displayed on the admin sheet, along with all the categories. Inputs and outputs. FD4Cast ribbon is divided into two main parts, inputs and outputs. One of the first steps in making inputs is bringing forward the trial balance as of the end of the period preceding the financial forecast start date. Initial trial balance input worksheet can be accessed by going to Enter TB from the Opening Trial Balance group. All the items from each category are automatically imported on this worksheet into column B. In column G, users can enter base period trial balance figures. This can be done either manually or by using the mapping column. Mapping column allows the user to match each account with a unique identifier, possibly an account code internally used by the company. Then, any lookup function can be used to import corresponding values of each identifier into column G. Short-term receivables and payables that are included in the base trial balance need to be manually unwound over the forecast periods. Unwound amounts are entered in corresponding periods in the Unwind TB section. The model makes it very easy for the user to replace forecast figures with actual results after each period is completed. In order to override forecast figures with actual results, first it is necessary to change the base trial balance date from admin sheet and set it at the end of the completed period. Next, we enter a new trial balance for the updated period into the TB input section under the corresponding month. We can use the same mapping system as during the initial trial balance input. Income and expenses can be managed from a separate group on the ribbon. In these categories, the user can enter projections for each income and expense item for all forecast periods, set client-supplier payment profiles, enter and reverse accruals and deferrals. Example. In the example here, we can see that for sales A, 50% of the revenue is reimbursed to our company by the customer within 30 days of sale. The remaining 50% is paid within 60 days. Accrued income is very easy to manage from this worksheet. If we have earned revenue that is yet to be received, we enter it into the corresponding yellow cells. Once the income has been recognized, we reverse the accrual and transfer it to actual revenue. Deferred income is the portion of a company's revenue that has not been earned, but cash has been collected from customers in the form of a prepayment. It can be recognized and then reversed in the same way as accrued revenue. The impact of each line item can be reviewed from the bottom of each worksheet without having to switch to the output items. Direct expenses and direct labour are managed from Direct Expenses section from the ribbon. Currently, there are 3 types of direct labour costs in the model. Additional rows can be added by going to Configure Model, Add Remove Category Rows. Direct expense costs are entered as positive figures, excluding VAT. Creditor profiles can be managed by applying a certain delay to full or part of the cost. For cash flow purposes, VAT is added to the cost figures and creditor profiles are applied. The impact of each direct expense item on financial statements can be reviewed from the bottom of the section. Overhead projections are entered in a separate section in FD4Cast model. The admin salaries section can be used to enter salaries as a sum figure for each period. This is an alternative to using a more detailed payroll section on the ribbon, where salaries will be accounted for in more detail. Overheads with corresponding creditor profiles will be entered in the section below salaries. Company can also easily account for any prepaid or accrued overheads. For example, if a company had paid for a whole year's worth of insurance up front, the amount paid would be an asset of company and it can be recorded as a prepaid overhead. The company can then reverse the associated monthly cost. It is also very simple to account for accrued overheads. When overheads are paid in arrears, the anticipated costs can be entered over the period that the overhead relates to, and then reversed out when the invoice is received. Assets, liabilities and equity are managed through 3 separate groups from the ribbon. Fixed assets are grouped into 3 categories: investments, intangible and tangible assets. All fixed assets, with the exception of investments, are subject to depreciation. Keep in mind that both purchases and depreciation figures should be entered as positive numbers in yellow cells. Assets in this section are reported net of VAT, as shown on the balance sheet. Depreciation for assets brought forward from before the forecasting period should also be reported in this section. For example, figures shown under Tangibles Depreciation section here relate to fixed asset balances from previous periods, as shown below. VAT and currency assumptions are managed from the Taxation group on the ribbon. On the VAT Assumptions page, the user must first configure the VAT rates that could apply to different kinds of transactions throughout the model. After configuring the VAT rates, we can then apply them one by one to each income, expense, overhead and fixed asset type separately, using the drop-down lists in yellow cells. VAT payments are also managed from the VAT Assumptions section. It is possible to assign fixed monthly payments for the VAT account. The model also allows the user to modify monthly payments for each period separately by unprotecting the model and manually entering the information in row VAT payments on account. Outputs. All 3 financial statements can be reviewed from the Financial Statements section. The information displayed here is sourced from the corresponding input sections. Users can also see the statements separately by clicking on Profit and Loss, Balance Sheet and Cash Flow buttons on the ribbon. The model enables the user to export output reports into a separate Excel workbook. This can be done by clicking on Reports Budgets, Export Reports. It is also possible to create multiple budgets and scenarios within the workbook by going to the Budgets Report section on the ribbon. In existing budgets for year-to-date periods, actual trial balance input is compared with initial forecast. For year-to-go periods, forecast is compared with the budget. In the built-in model, budget figures equal to forecast figures and variances are 0. The user can modify budgeted figures within the existing worksheets. It is also possible to add new budget versions. Adding new versions can be a useful tool for creating dynamic budgets throughout the year. The user can save old forecasts, but also create new ones on a regular basis. The Scenario tool within the model enables the user to save current financial statements as Scenario 1. After modifying the inputs that are linked to financial statements, the user can create Scenario 2. In the same manner, multiple scenarios can be created and compared for decision-making purposes. The Check Tools group on the ribbon is very useful for detecting errors throughout the model. Any errors on Audit Check Sheet let the user know where to investigate those errors. Unprotecting the workbook allows the user to utilize all Excel functionalities. Blank worksheets can be added to the model only after the model has been unprotected.